how much the person has of internal external rotation. And internal rotation is also, the glute medius is also very highly responsible for internal rotation as well. If a person doesn't have internal rotation, I promise you, their squat's definitely going to be compromised. Okay, so let's go through a movement a little bit. So Dunya said that this was abduction. Yeah, but remember, these are abduction of the femur. So not only, yeah, that trains abduction, like you see the girls like doing those booty kicks or whatever, but what you can do to initiate the abduction of the femur through your glute medius and your glute minimus is to actually lock out your knee and then rotate the knee outwards. I don't know if you guys can see this. I'm going to exaggerate the movement. So this will be inwards, lock out, and then rotate outwards. That rotation of the femur is abduction. And it's something I cue for a lot of my clients prior to squatting, okay, to get the most out of their glutes as possible. It also assists in the cue that I use, taught to me by Sebastian, which is open up the hips, knees out, spreading the floor, yeah, to get your glutes to work the entire time during your squat to prevent decay. To keep the spine stabilized, to keep the pelvis stabilized, and keep the femur stabilized while tracking outwards. Okay. Cool. Any questions? Yeah, no. Nope, cool. I really wish Constance was here. And Constance, if you are watching this is going to be awesome because she actually brought up a case study to me the other day about a guy who was doing step-ups. And I'll share the screen with you guys so we can have a look at this. Constance and Dunya. Constance and Dunya. Where are you guys? There we go. Okay, so this is one of the clients. Fun fact. So a bit of, I don't know why none of my videos are working. I apologize, but if you can see this tiny thing here, yeah, this is the client, and you can and she was telling me about the fact that she's been doing step ups for over 3 weeks now. There has been no improvement, okay, of the fact that the knee, the patella keeps going like sideways. Okay, and she was like, yeah, I think it's foot stability because you can see the foot like prolapse and, you know, and loose stabilization and toes go everywhere. But I was like, if you look closely, it's actually breaking down from the hip. And remember, we just talked about the glute medius, and we'll go quickly into it as well. So with the glute minimus as well, both are responsible on one leg, so unilaterally stabilizing the femur, okay, where it touches into the acetabulum of the pelvis, of the hip joint. Okay, so I said, okay, so it's been 3 weeks. Usually protocol is after 2 weeks. Yeah, if the corrective or the exercise isn't working, you need to change it up because there's something else at play here. And what Constance decided to focus on, which is good, like don't diminish the fact that her working like foot stabilization was the incorrect thing to do, because at the end of the day, everything is connected like we learned. So it all does aid into this, yeah? Increased foot stability, okay, is going to help increase his stability overall when he squats to prevent knee cave as well. However, the thing she kept glossing over was the fact that the glutes, especially glute medius and glute minimus, was not strong enough to actually stabilize that femur, especially going into knee flexion and also knee extension, yeah? So it was just shaking back and forth. So I was like, cool, like there's a couple ways to do this. If a person is so weak after correctives that they cannot perform the exercise unilaterally, there is a couple ways we can do this, okay? Can anyone tell me some methods they would do so that they can progress in this exercise?
I'm going to jump on that one. So you're asking about how we can progress that exercise that Constance was doing with the client?
No, okay, so how we can progress a result. So how we can get a result out, okay? Because this exercise hasn't been working for the client.
But, okay. Regardless, okay. One, that's not a step up. that's being performed. It's not being done correctly. It's just as you was talking about the knee. So I would suggest that it be done correctly, focusing on hinging of the hip and the knee, because from your teachings over the last few weeks, you've been really teaching us that the knee and the hip work together, or in that video was very knee dominant. So the transition of what you've been teaching us with anatomy, the mechanics of the squat, and the deadlift is that step up isn't going to transition to those teachings of squat and deadlift, because it is just knee breaking down. Where if we were to teach that client, using fingers or maybe a band around the hip, bring the hip back, so then there's a knee and hip hinge. Second is getting the client to touch with their toe, so it's literally just kiss the floor back up. So it's focusing on controlling the movement. Third would be is if she's still and you can see it because she's dropping. If you can't achieve it because there's a step, the step's too high, cool, reduce the range to the point that you can see just a bit of shaking of the leg. And you could use feedback, if the knee's here, teaching external rotation, but getting him to contact, here's my hand, here's the knee's collapsing in, pause, push the knee into my hand to create an isometric contraction at that point to create awareness. And the fifth thing would be is just you could superset it with some side clams or hip extensions to see if that carries over into that movement.
Thanks, Carl, for answering for everyone. Because that was the point I was going to get at. Maybe I worded the question wrong. But it's the fact that, one, why is he going into knee dominant? Yeah? Why is it a quad dominant exercise? That's the thing. Why is it not, improving? Yeah. So the fact is that, what I meant is that with regression, it doesn't mean just, okay, he's performing the exercise incorrectly, but why? They've been doing it for 3 weeks. He's still doing incorrectly. Okay. The possible things that could happen, okay, is one, incorrect coaching or incorrect cueing, or number two is the client is unable to actually perform that exercise at that certain point in time. It could be the fact that he's too weak to do it. He's too weak to do a unilateral step up, so he's performing it incorrectly. Okay, and what we can do, ways to actually resolve this or regress the exercise or to fix it, is the 5 points that Carl just made. So one is, if you look at it, he is not hinging from the hip. So thank you for pointing that out. And remember, when it comes to stabilization of the knee, where it goes in and outwards, yeah, it is the glute medius and the glute minimus that is responsible for actually stabilizing the femur in this exercise. There is also no extension coming through the hips when he comes up. So this has turned into a very quad dominant exercise. Things we can do to actually help with this is actually work on the glutes themselves, okay, to create better stabilization of the femur. So exercises like Carl suggested is going to be great, okay? And number two, okay, if you look at it, yeah, cool. He can also reduce the range like he stated, and he can also get his whole foot to touch the floor like I actually suggested to Constance on Wednesday as well. And number three, one thing you can actually do as well is change it into more of a bilateral exercise at this point in time, if the client is actually finding great difficulty doing it unilaterally, okay? And the thing why I say bilateral can work sometimes for helping unilateral discrepancies is I don't recommend it under heavy loading. This is just going to be dangerous and it's a high risk factor. But under body weight or maybe even machine work, whatever's going on with the left, if there is something going on and the right is performing correctly, the right can actually aid and assist. So the left side, if that is the weaker side, to actually perform, and over time can catch up. What you can do is not progress the weights, but instead keep the weights the same until you see an improvement on the bilateral exercise that carries over into the unilateral exercises as well. Yeah, that is also a way you can go about it. But as Carl stated, with those 5 points, that's something you can do when you see this occur. Okay, so instead of just continuously hammering something for 3 weeks, and like I said, don't diminish the fact that foot stability didn't equate to anything, because I guarantee you it's still going to aid him in his process and progression. When it's been over 2 weeks, it's time to figure out something else, okay? And maybe give a different exercise, for example, something that more targets the glutes before he goes back into a step up, maybe at a more reduced range and a more regressed version of it. But if you're going into a week in and you're really seeing something is not working out like how you want to, no matter how much you cue it, yeah, and no matter how much you demo it, then it's best to probably add in some corrective and see if there's something else to look at. Okay. Does anyone have questions on that before we continue? Cool. So I'm going to quickly go through gluteus minimus because it's very similar to glute med, and it's pretty much abduction, medial rotation, and also stabilization of the lumbar spine, pelvis, and knee as well. Cool. Awesome. So we are up to Jordan next. So we've got quadriceps. Okay. Can you please tell me before anything the 4 heads or the 4 muscles of the quads?
Rectus femoris, vastus lateralis, vastus medialis, and vastus intermedialis.
Yeah, cool, fantastic, thank you. So if we look at it in the rectus femoris, okay. Oh, 1 second. Not sure what just happened there. Anyway, cool. Sorry, my computer just spazzed out. So if we look into rectus femoris, okay, it means straight and femur. It's the one that runs straight down. Okay, vastus medialis, the one most medial, is usually that teardrop one. Vastus lateralis on the lateral side or outer side, and then vastus intermedialis, which lies within. Okay, it's not the oblique either. All right, cool. So Jordan, can you please tell me the movements of the quadriceps?
Well, they all extend the knee, and the rectus femoris flexes the knee.
Why is that? Can you turn on your camera, please, and show me knee extension? Cool, thank you. And why is it only the rectus femoris? Like, why is that the only thing that actually assists in extending the hip?
I think because is that the one that's attached to the pelvis, I think?
Well, it's only one that actually crosses over the hip joint. Yeah, out of all quad muscles. Yeah. And remember, it means straight and femur. It actually goes all the way up. Okay. Yeah. So knee extension exercises, great. A lot of people tend to work for hypertrophy purposes. They like to load it up on the leg extension. Like, fantastic. Me personally, I like to use a variation of knee extension exercises. Of course, my favorite being the barbell squat, as you all know. Yeah, you can build big quads of that. So we've got Maria. We got adductors next. First off, can you please list off the 3 main muscles of the adductors and the other 2 as well?
One second. Sorry, I'm just going through my pages.
Yeah. This is one more thing, guys. Like, remember to put those tabs like on the side of.
I did it, but actually they keep falling, so it didn't work. Okay, so you asked me for the 3
main like muscles of the adductors and the 2 little extra bonus ones, because there are 5 in total.
So it is adductor brevis,
Mhm.
adductor longus,
Yep.
brachialis. Did I say it right?
So what's the main ones first? Yeah. So we got brevis, longus, and what's the last main one?
Magnus.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So we've got the brevis, which is short. Okay. The longest, which is long, and then the magnus that is large. That's one way to think of it. Okay. And what are the other two extra ones?
The Pectineus.
Yeah, Pectineus, and you said it earlier.
Dorsiflexion.
Yeah. Cool. Fantastic. Okay. So
Do
those
we
are
not consider minimus?
sorry.
Do we not consider adductor minimus?
Adductor minimus.
Yeah,
Look.
because I learned it in my degree,
Okay.
but it's just
Cool.
like it's mostly considered part of Magnus. It's just not very much.
Because
Does its own thing.
yeah. So the thing is, like, so minimus, from what I understand, from the course that I learned as well in anatomy and that I searched over as well, is that the adductor magnus is divided up into two parts, yeah, because of the attachment points of it. And I think that these days they do include the minimus into magnus these days, just to simplify things. But they'll when these guys learn about attachments of proximal and distal, they'll learn like which part of the magnus is the minimus part and which part is the other part. But yeah, thanks for bringing that up, James. But I don't know. I think they do include it in these days. Yeah. Awesome. So Maria, can you tell me the movements, okay, of the adductor?
So adductor of the hip. It also does flexion of the femur.
Adductor of the, which one is that?
So the Pectineus does adduction and flexion of the femur.
Mm-hmm. Can you please tell me the three main ones first?
Okay, sorry.
So the brevis, the magnus, and the longus.
Okay, so the brevis is adduction of the thigh at the hip joint.
Okay.
It also assists in flexion and medial rotation of the femur at the hip joint. And then
Can you show me these actions, please?
just give me 1 second. One second. I'm from my computer and the comments.
Okay, that's okay. If you can't, that's fine. So, brevis. Okay. Say it again one more time.
So it does brevis. It does adduction of the thigh at the hip joint.
Mm-hmm. So
It assists
abduction.
Yeah, adduction.
Yep.
It assists in flexion and medial rotation of the femur at the hip joint.
Yep. And then medial rotation as well.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool.
And then
Awesome.
adductor's longus is adduction at the thigh at the hip joint.
Did you say abduction or adduction?
Adduction.
Yeah. Okay.
ADD. And it also assists flexion and medial rotation of the femur at the hip joint.
Yep. Cool. So once again, it's flexion and medial rotation as well.
And then we got what was the other one? Adductor brevis longus. Then we have the two small ones.
So look, yes, there's the two small ones, but the main roles I want you to focus on when it comes into the adductors, yeah, is mostly that it does aid in, okay, abduction. So it's just because they're adductors, it doesn't just do adduction. Yeah, it actually massively aids in abduction, okay, and stabilization of the femur, yeah, of the knee joint as well, because it does like yeah, so the magnus, yeah, because the magnus part actually does attach into the pelvis, yeah, so it stabilizes the pelvis and also how the femur like rotates as well, okay. But what it means by adduct is it more helps assist in medial rotation instead. And the big things of what these adductors also do is stabilize the pelvis, okay, and also the lumbar spine as well, because that is connected. Okay, so it helps with stabilization of this, yeah, and it does also assist in hip extension as well. Yeah. So why I tell you guys this, okay, is because if you think at the bottom, at the very end range of a squat, which is, you know, at the most flex point of the hip, okay, it's not just glutes, and this is where it ties in once again on what I want to teach you guys is that everything is connected. It's not just glutes. Yeah, adductors plays a massive role, okay, in abduction, and also in extension, yeah, also medial rotation, but in an extension and abduction. I need you guys to remember this because a lot of you, for example, I'm going to pull Eddie's example up with Tim again, okay, where Tim had he still can't squat depth, but he had a lot of restriction in his squat, okay, especially on descent. And Eddie could see that, and he was getting feedback from the client that his adductors were really, really tight, and it wasn't allowing him to open up the hips, spread, push the knees out, and spread the full. Correct me if I'm wrong, Eddie. Yeah. No.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. So it was getting, yeah, exactly, and it was getting feedback like this is tight. So Eddie, what he tended to do, okay, and I'm not saying it was wrong, okay, because remember, there's not just one way to do something, but it didn't prove effective, okay. So what Eddie went to do instead was chose exercises to lengthen the adductor instead, okay. And now knowing this, the roles of the adductors and what it does to assist our lifts, you know, remember extension and also abduction as well. And it stabilizes lumbar spine, pelvis, and the knee, okay, by the femur. What he was doing was lengthening the only muscle that was working to stabilize these parts, which was not really helping Tim to increase the efficiency and the performance of his squat. And instead, it probably went a little bit backwards. Okay, maybe he could spread his knees out wider, but it wasn't controlled, it wasn't strengthened, and it wasn't stabilized. Okay, so knee cave still kept coming in. Depth wasn't really getting much better. Yeah, little do you know, okay, stopped. I advised Eddie, okay, let's think about something else. What else is also responsible for abduction and extension? You know, the glutes. So when I advised him, okay, let's do glutes instead, and we actually strengthened the muscles that were supposed to help Tim out of the most flex point in the bottom of the squat to go into extension, and he could do abduction again and actually push the knees out. He actually saw increased performance in his squat, okay, and actually it helped his range and depth as well, yeah. And all of a sudden, I bet you anything, his adductors probably didn't feel so tight. Hey, actually, Eddie, yeah, did he complain about his adductors feeling tight anymore when you worked on his glutes?
He wasn't mentioning.
Yeah. Right, cool. So remember, if and that brings back to, you know, like correctives, exercises, and exercise selection. I'm gonna keep repeating this to you guys. No fucking stop, because next week we're gonna go into program design. Okay, and this is a big lesson. If something isn't working, like after 2 weeks, and I mean it's not working, you are not seeing progression at all. Things keep happening, no matter how much you cue it, no matter how much you change the cues. Okay. Maybe even you regress the exercise and it's still persistent, you're probably not addressing the correct thing and you've chosen the incorrect exercise for that person at that time. It's time to change. Yeah? There's no need to wait out a 4 week block just to be like, oh, sorry, I didn't do anything. You know, let's try something else. Okay. 2 weeks. I'd say that's the absolute max. Yeah, if you're not seeing any progression at all. Okay, so exercise selection is going to be a huge part. Specificity and exercise selection is going to be a huge part in our next module of these talks, which is programming. Okay, because I know some of you actually have asked me a lot on programs lately. Cool. So we're going into James. So James, The hamstrings are split into three muscles. Can you please tell me what these are called?
Semitendinosus, semimembranosus, and biceps femoris.
Yeah, cool, fantastic. Okay, thank you. All right. Fun fact: if you guys, I did this with you guys last time. Let's do it again one more time. If you guys sit down, right now, okay, and you put your hands, if you want to feel your tendinosus, these two ones, and if you want to hook your hands kind of underneath, where your hamstring attaches, okay, I want you to push as hard as you can into the floor of your leg, and then pull back while pushing into the floor. You'll feel these two things pop out. Yeah, they can kind of roll your fingers over. It's not right. It doesn't. It feels quite weird. Yeah, that's it. Okay, and these things help stabilize the patella, the knee. Okay. So James, can you please show me, if you can, and also tell me the actions and movements of the hamstring?
So hip extension.
Mm-hmm.
And also shin lateral and medial rotation.
Yep. Cool. Thank you. That's great.
I don't know if it does anything else, but yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
Cool.
remember off the top of my head.
So
So just
thanks.
so hip extension would just be this,
Mhm.
and then just external and internal rotation.
Cool.
For the shin.
Yeah, thank you very much. So all three of these muscles, work to extend the hip, okay, and also have lateral rotation, medial rotation as well. But the thing is, you need to know one thing, okay, is that the biceps femoris, okay, is the one that actually attaches over the hip joint, so it actually does help stabilize the pelvis as well, yeah. And it also controls the stability of the femur as well. Okay? And it helps flex the knee too. Yeah? So it doesn't just extend. Biceps femoris helps flex the knee just because it attaches and
Oh, wait, yeah, true. I forgot about that.
yeah, all good, yeah. So remember one more time, if someone, and I'm going to bring it back into like another case study of case studies, right? But I get a lot of people who usually tell me, and I was a victim of this as well. They'll come to me and be like, "Oh, this point really hurts." You know, even my girlfriend tells me, like right now, she's like, she points it, and she's like, "Yeah, that just really hurts." And that's somewhere. Okay, I'm theorizing. And I got told by Amy herself that for me it was my SI joint. When Lou was pointing, it was probably around the SI joint. I say probably because I'm not a doctor. But the thing is, understand is that the SI joint has a lot of attachments that go into that point. Yeah. So think about it this way: someone has had back pain for a long time on one side, SI joint. Maybe it's not just the quadriceps lumborum, okay? That is like contracting and pulling one side up of the hip, so it's causing pain through that joint. It could be a lot of other things. It could be the glutes are not stabilizing the pelvis and the lumbar spine too well. It could be the adductors. Yeah. And finally, it could also be the hamstring as well. Okay. And that's where I tie it back into. Like with me, I've worked a lot of exercises to help with my back pain. And I do them twice a day as well. Okay. But for a long time now, I have seen improvements, but it's still not completely gone. Yeah, and I've noticed recently I haven't done much of hamstring flexion because I don't have the equipment. I would love to steal a hamstring curl and a lat pull down from the gym, but it's just Carl said no. Unfortunately, I'd pay him, but he said no. And I'm feeling more and more back pain. Could be because I'm sitting down all the time as well. Like it could be a lot of things, but maybe it's because I'm actually not doing any like hamstring flexion exercises. Yeah, because the hamstring the biceps femoris does help flex the knee. I'm not doing any of that. Maybe and that can also contribute to SIJ pain because where it attaches into, okay, because it does help stabilize the pelvis. So maybe that's also contributing to the back pain. I don't know, but all I know is that it's getting worse and worse to the point where now I've actually referred out again This time I'm going to see Pei. I don't know if you guys know her from PB Physio. Awesome lady, yeah. Specializes in powerlifting. A great physio. I'd probably say like close to on par with Dr. Andrew Locke, someone I really respect as well. And I've reached out to her because I'm just like, man, there's just so many exercises. You know, I don't know what's going on anymore. Can you please help me target whatever the hell it is so I can fix it once and for all? And that's what I mean for you guys as well. Tie it back into there's a 2-week capacity. You know, if you see no progress at all, and I'm talking about not even like small progressions. I'm talking about 0 progressions. Same things happen. It's time to move on. And I'm going to keep drilling this into your heads, okay? Because what it means is that it's an incorrect exercise selection, which means that it's probably not a good program because your client is not going to progress from it and is not going to see results from it, okay? So remember that there's more than one thing, there's more than one thing to look at, all right? Cool. So one more thing to notice is the semitendinosus and the semimembranosus also both work to medially rotate the femur. That's the ones that are responsible for medial rotation of the femur or internal rotation. Okay. If Carl wants to take this because it's his favorite 2 muscles of the body, feel free to. So the last one is calves. And Carl, if you could please tell me the 2 muscles or the 2 heads of the calves, that'd be fantastic. You can even show it on yourself.
What? Don't you mean the penis? It flexes and flaccid?
I don't think.
Boom!
I don't think a penis can flex on its own accord.
Well, no, we call it erect, but it does flex. It's the only flexion that
There's no
extends.
bone in it.
It's the only flexion that extends.
There's no fucking bone in it. There's no joint in it.
Why is it called a
Yeah.
boner? Oh, great. The
I thought
Gastroc
sex-
and Soleus.
Anyway, the Gastrocnemius and Soleus. Thank you. Okay, so the Gastrocnemius means like the belly. Okay, so the belly of the leg, and the Soleus is they call it like flatfish, or it's the flat part. Okay, so these are the 2 heads of it. And
Question.
yes, James.
Do we not consider all the other calf muscles?
So with the purpose
Or
of
is it
this.
just we did like the more important ones?
Well, for the purpose of this, to keep anatomy just a little bit more simple at this point in time, we're just gonna say the main ones that will help the guys like program, and also better understanding of what stabilizes, you know, the ankle and the knee joint, which is what these 2 calf muscles does. In a more advanced setting, so just to go over, this is more like anatomy 101, yeah, and basic movements of it, and like the main muscles, because there's more than 600 muscles, from my understanding. Don't quote me on that number of the body. We won't go into every single one of them just yet. The next part we'll be talking about the distal and proximal attachments of these muscles, and then we can go into like further things to understand.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's just so these guys can, you know, get a better understanding of programming. But James, if you want to chime in, buddy, like feel free to, because I would love to know as well. Yeah, cool. So with the gastroc, okay, both of these work. Oh, I can't really show too well, so I'm just gonna use my hands. So plantar flex. Okay, so that's plantar flexion. Okay, and also works to okay, sorry, 1 second. Let me remember. So both of them work to plantar flex, okay? But the gastroc also crosses and attaches over the knee, okay? So it does actually contribute to knee joint flexion, but because of where it is actually at a massive mechanical disadvantage. So instead, if you want to work the gastroc properly, it works better when the knee is in an extended state, yeah? Which is why we recommend people to actually do standing calf raises instead, yeah? Because it puts them in a knee extension, so in a more like extended state, so they can actually fire the gastroc more effectively. Can lift more load as well that way. But gastroc is something that you do. The calves, look, at the end of the day, calves is something that you want to train, yeah? Not just for aesthetic reasons like Carl, But the calf is something that you want to train at the end of the day because all these muscles work to stabilize, okay, and protect like joints. Like that's what they do. Structural balance, definition, one more time. Structural balance means the ability of muscles to stabilize a joint and also centralize a bone where it connects into the joint. Yeah, this is why structural balance is a fundamental, which is why, yeah, Carl, thanks. And which is why structural balance is such a fundamental through any phase, any block, any cycle of training, no matter what your goal is. Okay, personally, to me, that's what I believe. Okay, I know some people will disagree with me, especially when it comes to aesthetics and hypertrophy training, but to me, it doesn't matter. You should still cater to structural balance because at the end of the day, you're going to be working the weaker muscle, which is more often a smaller muscle. So in the end, they look more fuller and more symmetrical and more pleasing to the judges anyway. Okay, but one more time, with the gastroc, it does crosses over the knee, and it does aid in flexion. Okay, which is why I do recommend training it because it will help stabilize the knee. Okay, and the soleus, on the other hand, is the only thing is the only one that attaches just into the Achilles tendon itself. Okay, so it is more recommended that you do a seated calf raise to get into the soleus instead. Or gastroc, because it attaches from the knee and also into the Achilles tendon, it is more recommended to do standing up in the knee of the knee in an extended state. Okay, cool. So that was anatomy 101, like covered, that we've done upper, we've done core and spinal stabilizers, and we've also done lower now. Okay, before we're gonna go for a quick 5-minute break before we go into more case studies, okay, that Maria has provided of herself and a client. But before we go into anything else, are there any questions so far?
Tibialis anterior.
So, okay, so tib anterior. Let's okay. So Carl actually brought up a pretty good point, is that with training calves, it does help increase his range of movement in his squat because it does help increase dorsiflexion. Okay, but the fact is, we've actually seen some clients and they will train, let's say, donkey calf raises, so they increase the dorsiflexion by putting tension on and loading the muscle in that way to lengthen it and eccentrically lengthen it at the same time to create more movement of the ankle joint, but it's not enough. Okay, and at that point, Carl has now mentioned tibialis anterior. Yeah, why would I bring up the point of movement and range of the ankle in dorsiflexion if Carl has mentioned tibialis anterior?
Tibialis anterior is the very good dorsiflexor.
Yeah, cool, exactly. Yeah. So remember, in a bone or a joint, there was always movement pairings, and there's also muscle pairings at the same time. Okay, and if there is a movement pairing, there's going to be certain muscles that are responsible for the movements. So we have, once again, the agonist, okay, which is the prime mover, and then the antagonist, which is the thing that assists with movement. More often, what the antagonist does, if we do a refresher, is to eccentrically contract, which is lengthen, to allow movement, or isometrically contract, okay, to help with isometric contraction and stabilization of the joint, if that is what you're doing at the time. So tibialis anterior is, like James said, thank you, is a great dorsiflexor. Okay, so if you're working continuously on the gastroc, on the soleus, and you're working dorsiflexion, okay, this whole time, and it's not working with just calf raises and lengthening those muscles out with load, one thing you might want to look at is a tibialis, well, Carl's got a tib anterior machine to help with his range, but it's actually worked banded tib.
Got another question.
You know why? Carl purchased the machine so we'd have it during lockdown, and he got it delivered broken. And then it was funny because then Tats went to use it and nearly hurt himself. Ha ha ha! Irony.
Yeah, funny. I hope this. Yeah. But quickly before James, so one thing is that what you guys can do is also a banded tib anterior raise as well, which is creating dorsiflexion this way, which you are going to create concentric contraction through tib anterior to help with that flexion. Yeah. Sorry, James, you said you had a question for Carl?
Oh yeah, just a question for Carl. I was just wondering, have you been using the tib anterior thingy?
It's broken. I've actually I have saw someone else, which I'm quite excited. So I'll have a machine tib anterior machine and a free weight tib anterior machine. So I'm able to train the tib anterior in a flexed knee and also an extended knee state, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
It was really funny because he sent me a video and been like, "It's here." 2 minutes later, he's like, "Fuck," and I was like, "What?" And you guys know those like plastic, like wraps or string things that they keep like containers held together. Well, it wasn't plastic; it was steel. Yeah.
Yeah. So for 30 minutes, I'm just doing this.
Yeah.
Create friction and melt it.
And Kate told me that the box was like nailed with like nails like jutting out of the boxes and everything, so it was a complete health hazard. Messaged me like 2 hours later, being like, "I got it open." 5 minutes later, it's broken. I'm like, "Fuck, dude."
Wasn't me. So I think one thing to add to it is that though the tib anterior it may be a great dorsiflexion muscle, it's commonly untrained and trained and used incorrectly. Because the way we walk, we actually don't put ourselves through full dorsiflexion into plantar flexion. So we're never actually training this muscle to its greatest ability. And then when you see people train it, they put the head against the wall at 45 degrees. And when we train the tib, the problem is when you train dorsiflexion to plantar flexion, it's the greatest way to work the tib anterior is what Tats just said, use a band, but don't just use it forward, because it goes into plantar flexion and internally rotates. So that's the position you should start with, and then you turn it out and up. So using a band, you would literally, so if it was anchored, so let's say if it was anchored here, my foot would be to the side, because then the band pulls it in towards it to pull up.
Would you say that it helps with like foot stability in a squat?
Retranslate your question.
So like, for example, well, my thinking would be like, so just a little bit of background is of why I asked about the other calf muscles. It's related to the first case study that you showed us, which was how you noted that the ankle was collapsing a little bit. And one thing that I did to fix my ankle, because I tore one of the medial tendons in lateral tendons in my ankles.
Oh fuck!
And I didn't do a lot of rehab on it, and I also have extremely bad flat foot.
Ankle lesions usually.
Yeah, exactly. But one thing I realized is it's not so much I needed something to, like, for example, an insole. It was more so that the muscles in my feet were weak as well. So, like, for example, one way I fixed my ankle stability issue, because I used to always have pain in the wall, was just squat with like decent form, and it helped with the stability a lot. And I feel like also training the lateral, like the foot inverters and everters, for example, would help a lot with that kind of movement. But then like the muscles aren't covered, so then
Why are flat feet bad?
It's just like it collapsed my foot, so then my knees would cave in naturally. So then when I put in the insole, it would help a bit until it got heavy, and then the collapsing would happen again. So I decided, fuck this all, I'm going to just train light and then really slowly build up to the point where I can just naturally keep my feet not collapsed.
So your feet weren't flat, they were just inverting inwards, which led to the collapse.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Yeah,
because they were already like if I stand naturally, my feet just collapse. Like back when I went to the podiatrist, I was like, what's happening?
Well, like, give like a bit of my personal experience as well. Like, I've got super flat feet, you know.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I look personally with me. The reason why I didn't teach those other muscles as of yet is because I didn't really personally find it necessary. And the reason why, was because when I trained, I was stripped for a while. I actually stripped all like socks, shoes, anything. Shut the fuck up, whoever you are. I stripped everything off my feet and I just trained. And what I did instead was to cue I'm pretty sure you would have used that as well. Heard the terminology is a tripod foot.
Yeah.
Where I just cued to like smash my toe down, my big toe down, onto the floor. And over time, that actually did help me strengthen up my feet because if I stand naturally as I do right now, I do have knee cave, because I do have quite flat feet as well. Yeah, if I'm aware of it, I realize that cool, I'm actually like slanting inwards.
Yeah.
But for me, is like just training the tripod foot actually already increased stability because everything is connected down to the foot and the ankle portion of it. Yeah. So for me, I didn't really look to do those other exercises because that was already sufficient enough. And number
that
two,
was my question because I only did that as well.
Yeah. But
because I found that plenty into it. Yeah.
Yeah, but number two, what I actually found help as well is actually doing calf raises. Well, for me, it was doing calf raises correctly. Yeah, and that was because before I met Carl, like how I did calf raises was literally go to the highest peak as high as I can. But there was no stability at
Sickle
that point.
feet.
Yeah, so twinkle toes, So Gastroc, and Soleus, the main two, weren't even supporting my ankle at that point, and I would just rotate out, and it just caused instability. And at that point, I also realized I wasn't really controlling the movement from my feet either. It was just going up as high as I can, and sometimes I would lose balance. And instead, reducing the range of it and actually making sure that, it actually just ensured that correct muscles were being used, and also pushing down on my big toe as well did eventually help to strengthen the muscles in my foot and also the stability of my ankles too. Because I rolled my right really bad to the point where it still does this thing where it cracks really badly because it's a little bit loose. And it's just you got loose ligaments in there. You rolled your ankle really badly once upon a time ago and you didn't rehab it when you were in high school. Kind of.
Is there any way to fix that? Because I don't know what's wrong with my shoulders, but I used to swim a lot. I trained 7 times a week, that a lot. So my right shoulder, whenever I do external rotations, it just crackles. But it's only in my right, which is bizarre.
Look, for me, I'd personally refer out.
That's Pandora's box, bro. Is it the bicep? Which external rotator?
I get.
Maria, your dog's looking to give us the answer. Is it that your upper traps are dominant and your deeper traps aren't, or your rhomboids aren't? Do you have a misaligned rib? It's totally Pandora's box. But again, I would attest to what Tats has said. Do it for 2 weeks and then change something. You'll find modified big 3, rhomboid activators, lock big 4. A lot of these hit a lot of these muscles. And you'll find out straight away, the one you're the worst at, the one you probably need. The modified big 3, my arms, I can keep my hands here. And then I should be able to externally rotate and keep my arms, in this position if my torso is here. Thing is, I flare all the way out. So I got to really work external rotation more. And thoracic extension. Is it your again, another one are you kyphotic, which is causing you to be slightly forward? Because
slightly right now because I stopped training and then everything's kind of
oh dude, everything we do is in front of us, so it's a never-ending battle. But the thing to bring back, I just want to bring it back for you is, do you still have that issue with your glute?
I've been squatting a lot more recently.
Yes or no?
I've been consistently training now.
Just yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. So the thing is, when you've got challenges with your feet, okay, if the knee collapses in 3 degrees, it has a cause and effect upstream, which is in the hip. So it's interesting that you've had challenges with your feet and you're also got challenges within your glute. So just training that external rotation portion. So because that's training the and this is where you've got so many schools of thought, which is you shouldn't do side clams and hip extensions and banded abductions because the mechanics of your foot will fix that. Because the mechanoreceptor, when you push the big toe down and the heel into the floor, stimulates the mechanoreceptor to recruit the glutes more. It's like, okay. And then you've got other people that say, don't worry about training the feet, train the hips. It's like, it all fucking works. So if you've got challenges with your feet, it's like, it's hard. This is the fun part about training people, is that you don't know what fucking muscle it is. Like, fun fact, you got no fucking idea what muscle is really the problem. It's just, you know, in that general area there's a bunch of muscles and you have an idea of how to train those muscles.
Yeah.
So, because the thing is, when you work, and this is why Tats is teaching it this way, so you have a good understanding of what's going on. Because the thing is, if you lock your leg out and you go into full dorsiflexion into plantar flexion, what part of the calf do you hit? Because the thing is, if like you turn it in more, if you turn it out more, you're going to hit more lateral gastroc. Does that mean the medial doesn't work at all? Well, no, it still works, just favors a little more of that outer portion. So it's going to all get hit. But I think the fundamental parts is like, get that tripod foot working, really anchored in the floor, and just see where like that midline of your foot and the knee, where does that work for you? And you can look at where you squat your heaviest. Like you could look at your 160, 180, 200, 210, 220, and look at what point, like look at where that knee's tracking. And you'll find that like wherever the breakdown in technique is, you go back to that one and you go, okay, that's where my knee is, knee. Okay, this is the alignment where my knee needs to be. And so you can do like aeroplanes, assisted aeroplanes, without the plane noise, of course. Anchor your foot, tripod, set the symmetry of the knee, and then work that movement of the opposite leg, and you'll find out very quickly what your actual true range of your hip is. Because, and like this one goes to Tats because he trains more people than me now, is that observing a lot of people just think, I just got to work my hip. But the thing is, you've got to work the foot, the knee, and the hip. And that's teaching you that stability, and that's going to get all the muscles in the knee, all the muscles around the foot, knee, and hip, all working together. Because it's great doing all these isolations and getting everything primed up, but like really great exercise that Tats kind of brought back to my, because I used to use it and then I just stopped using it because I went into isolations. But Tats now, like, you go isolations to bring people back into the compound. That hip aeroplane is like fucking awesome.
Yeah, because the thing with like to understand with like what they call like isolated exercises is that there's no such thing, because we're talking about like predominantly a lot of people are talking about like muscles, you know. But the fact is that you can never isometrically you can never just isolate a muscle. Yeah, you can't just specifically target like let's say like the bicep short. You know, when you want to do a bicep curl, there's always going to be like synergists and fixators that always come into it. But instead, what you can look into doing is isolate a joint when you want to choose an exercise for exercise selection of programming to see whatever it's going to fix it. That's why when I say like I'm teaching these guys a very broad like anatomy is because, well, if they know this, yeah, it's gonna, if they isolate a joint, if they know something's going on and they can target the agonist or antagonist portion of it, you know, or maybe like if they know some basics of synergists or fixators, whatever exercise you do, you're going to recruit other things as well. And over time, with volume and frequency, these things are going to get strengthened as well. And it'll work. It's just unless you do choose the incorrect exercise, which they are, because it means they're unable to do it. Okay, it's not cueing, it's they're unable to complete it because there is a breakdown in movement and something else needs to be addressed. It's just an incorrect exercise at an incorrect time. So when you say like cool, that's why when you said like what exercise do you recommend? Well, for me, Amy recommended that I just stand my foot and balance for 30 seconds, 3 sets, 3 times a day. You know, and yeah, look, like it did help for a little while, but I didn't see too much improvement after a while, like with single leg balances. And instead, what really did help, more than just doing like calf raise, and that's like thanks to Ames. Like back then, she wasn't even training yet, and she helped me out a lot. But the thing was, like, calf raises helped for a while too. Being barefoot on a lot of exercises helped too. But bring it back to Constance's client, where his foot was kind of like it was kind of collapsing, itself and wobbling from side to side too. If you look at it, the breakdown is from the hip as well. And what I found, especially in a lot of females as well, is that a lot of them are genetically, they have valgus where the knees cave in, and instead of just correcting the foot all the time, I got them to squat bare feet, yeah. Because it helps them with the tripod foot, it helps them with the foot stability. Yeah, they do calf raises as well, to the correct range where they can control. But for me personally, what helped more than anything was actually getting the glute medius and the glute minimus more strong to stabilize that femur, and that actually stopped the valgus as much, because it helped bring back the natural kind of centralize the femur, so it sat a little bit more externally rotated out, so a little bit more laterally rotated, and that in itself, because it rotated it out, it caused the feet to not concave collapse in anymore. Yeah, and instead brought it to a more level setting, even if they were flat-footed. I'm not saying it fixed it completely, but it definitely did help. Yeah. So one more time, and I'm not going to keep saying this, is that everything is connected. But if it is your shoulder and it's something cracking, yeah, or whatever it is, like I can't in good conscience, recommend anything for you. There'll be a lot of things to do. It'll just save you time. If I honestly recommend Pay by PB Physio or Ames, our chiropractor. But Pay, like, she works with weightlifters, she works with Olympic lifters. She's awesome. I recommend to seek her out if it has been something that has been bothering you for a really long time. And
because it's only when I do like explicitly external rotations. Like I don't ever get issues when I'm doing like snatches, cleaning jerks, and stuff. So it's just the noise as well. It's not like it hurts.
Yeah,
it's just bizarre.
But this is a thing.
Because it's not that something like I want to like actively fix. It's more so like I'm trying to ask why is this happening, because it helps me. It's just knowledge. That's interesting.
Man. Could be like, honestly, it could be numerous things.
Hang on. Pause for a sec. Okay. You're not trying to fix it, but you want to know how to fix it, but you don't want to action it.
It's not like I want to know why it's happening, more so than to fix it, because it's not an issue that's bothering me. It's something interesting that's happening, and I want to know why.
So it's clicking or grinding?
Yeah, it's just crackling when I'm moving through this motion.
Okay. Like lack of lubrication, joint could be sitting forward, grinding on something else, or tendon could be flicking over. It's not sitting in the right position. So, okay, got to get it to go back. Question for you would be is, when you gently set the shoulders back into position, does it still make that noise? So if you would elongate the spine, so literally from grabbing your head, you elongate yourself.
Yeah.
So it's like you're being pulled up, broaden through the chest, so feel yourself spread out, so it's not just jammed back, it's spread out, and then go to move through the shoulder.
Yeah, it still makes that noise.
Okay.
It's like more it's end range of internal rotations. Like
same?
Right here, it makes a crack noise.
Is it the same, less or more?
It's about the same.
Okay. Because the only difference is that your range was less when you went into normal. Okay, That's really interesting. I like lie on the stomach. See what happens when you apply resistance to it. So possibly you're going through a passive range versus active range. So because you're upright, you have a greater ability to go further. And like all the tendons of the pec and the bicep of being overloaded, rather than getting the back into position, like leaning forward, which is also a really interesting way to assess like what's known as frozen shoulder or shoulder pain. Is like people go, it hurts when I lift my arm over my head. You actually get people to go forward. You just go, hey, can you bend over for me? They bend over. Yeah, cool. Bring your arm up and stand up. And it's like, it doesn't hurt. It's because the muscles are working, where up here they're not as much.
Yeah.
So that's a great way.
I'm doing rotator cuff right now.
So stand up, test it for us.
Yep.
So hinge forward. Yep, and lift it up.
Yeah, it still happens.
Yeah, cool. Same, less or more?
It's the same place.
But remember you're cracking, So is it the same amount of cracking, less, or more?
It's the same.
Okay, cool. So yeah, definitely would refer out. So just a note, sorry I jumped in Tats, but for guys, you need to always confirm same, less, or more. And with pain, like a recommendation is give them the worst option last because you really want to challenge yourself. So it's like, oh, is the pain the same, less, or more? Because typically people take the last one, they go, oh, more. So if you say it, they'll have to think about it if your job is to correct and minimize pain, which obviously we should all be doing. So if you ever get a client who's not taking it seriously, you'll find them like, oh yeah, it's more. But the thing was the last thing I said, first thing I said, which was the last thing James heard, which was same. He's still saying the same. So it means then the movements and what Tats has said, change it every 2 weeks. It's like, if it's the same, it's like, okay, maybe it could work because it's not getting better. It's not getting worse, but it's the same. Because in the famous words of Andrew Locke, it's always like, yeah, well, you haven't worked on it for a while, so you're going to have to work it for now. So, yeah. Cool. So that 5-minute break at 6 o'clock kind of...
Yeah, never mind. Yeah. Look, it's just the thing with it could even be like I came across a dude I was training before and he had loose ligaments from playing like footy a long.
Oh, coconut butter! You're as bad as bear.
Can I show a video of me squatting? I found an old video of me squatting, and it is a back view, so I can see with whether on my knees.
Cool. Well, let's pause. I'll bring that into case studies because that'll allow me to quickly stop this recording, re-record in 5.
Thank you. Sorry, it's not here. He's barking all the time. Like, come on. Anyway. Fuck, it's like having... It's sorry, my dog's going nuts because of